Welcome everybody to the Syspro USA hosted webinar entitled Warehouse Management for Syspro. This is the second of 4 partner webinars Syspro will host over the next 5 weeks or so. We know your time is very valuable, so we thank you very much for taking the time to attend this webinar. First, I'd like to introduce our participants. Our main presenter is Rich Dediger, Vice President of Marketing for Manufacturing Systems Corp. Next, on color, we have Lars Razier, who's our Solutions Engineer for Syspro USA, and myself, Bruce Wilson, Product Marketing at Syspro USA. We have an excellent presentation for you today. This presentation will detail how our partner Warehouse Management Systems collect WMS for Syspro can add significant value and seamless integration into your Syspro solution. So a little bit of housekeeping. First of all, we will be recording this webinar today, and we'll make it available to you probably early next week. We want to make this presentation as valuable as possible to you, so please submit your questions via the Questions tab, which is basically the screenshot to the right on this screen. We'll try to answer all questions. We've got about 45 minutes allocated for this presentation and about 15 minutes for the questions. Also, I sent you a copy of the presentation this morning. If you did not receive it, please let me know. My email will be on the last slide of this presentation. And go ahead and send me an email, and I'll make sure that you get the presentation. So now I'm going to hand off to Rich Dediger to do the main part of the presentation.
Okay, good morning, everybody. Can you see my screen okay? Bruce, is
yes.
That good there? Okay. Well, as Bruce said, thanks for joining us. We're going to kind of roll through a lot of material here, but feel free to send questions, or if you think of something later on, send an email to Bruce and we'll be happy to answer it. Just a 2-minute background on Manufacturing Systems Corp. Been in business for 12 years. We have 150 clients in 15 countries. We're headquartered in Toronto, Canada, and I'm speaking to you from New Jersey, where I'm actually just happy to have power, lights, and internet. So let's try to move ahead here. Okay, so often people ask about WMS, and it's like, should I do that? Do I need to do it? Is it bigger than a bread box? We're going to try to answer those questions today, along with giving you some idea what the functionality is. So I want to talk a little bit about why you would use WMS benefits, how we integrate to Syspro, because I think it's important to have a tight integration so that it's trouble-free. How we deal with locations and inventory and order fulfillment. Those are the 3 big buzzwords, if you will, of the 3 things we need to make happen in the warehouse. And then lastly, we need to get shipping and get paid, right? After that, we'll take questions and answers. So why would we implement WMS? And it's not always a question of size. I mean, in some cases, large corporations, shipping thousands of orders a day with 20, 30, 40 pickers in the warehouse needed just to manage the volume. But in other cases, it's because of unique business situations where the WMS functionality allows to deal with things a little differently than Syspro might. So for example, flexibility in location structures. I'll talk a little bit about, literally, we can have any combination of companies, warehouse, sites, bins, real or virtual, and construct how they roll up within one another. So we have a lot of flexibility there. The next is inventory allocation options. Now the trigger for us to pick orders is Syspro running allocations. And that tells us what customer gets what goods. What our allocations do is define which actual physical inventory should we consume for that. So we're going to look at things like FIFO, FIFO, unique customer rules. For instance, some customers will have a FIFO rule that says I have a sell-by date and I won't take anything any older than that sell-by date, even though it's within the expiration date. So there's some unique capabilities we can do there. A big thing is license plate technology. License plate is really an ID that creates a virtual location in space. And that ID could be a tote, it could be an item, it could be a bin, it could be a trailer. Any configuration we want, and we do a lot of unique things with license plates. Directed put-away logic. people in the high volume business, and throughout here we have some examples from our largest Syspro customer, 1,000 bulbs. But if you looked at their operation, there's as many tractor trailers coming in at the back end to unload goods as there are trucks to pick up shipments on the way out. You know, in a distribution environment, that inventory turn is pretty fast. And directed put away says, I want to use the power of the WMS to organize how goods are put away in the warehouse. So literally create a path for the warehouse worker to put those goods away. Send him to the proper bin that's got room for that item. And if necessary, allow for the recreation of additional space if the order is bigger than we expected. On the other side, batch picking, we want to do the same thing. We want to organize how we pull orders in the warehouse to take advantage of the employee, the equipment, what zone he works in the warehouse. Perhaps a carrier delivery. I've got UPS coming at 2 and I want to have all my UPS orders pulled and staged before they get there at 2 o'clock. So it's a lot of things we can do with batch picking. Task management, if you will, is now workflow management for the warehouse worker, where in fact we can direct these people where they come in and sign in to the handheld device. We know who they are, where they work, what language they read. And based on those criteria, we know what amount of work to give them, and also we know about when that work should be done. So kind of moving into the labor management now for the warehouse side. Real-time shipping integration. Everybody ships today from a mix of carriers, be it UPS, FedEx, believe it or not, 1,000 bulbs is half their business with the post office, as well as to LTL carriers. And being able to do that real time and capture pro numbers, freight charges, what have you, so your customer service people have the latest information is pretty important. And then lastly, improved warehouse management. There's 3 value items, if you will, in the warehouse that we're trying to manage today. One is the cost of the physical space. Right? How much does it cost us to rent, own, construct a warehouse, and how efficient are we using that space? Second is the turn of the inventory. Right? We want to have the inventory available and an easy way to disperse it and protect it from excessive handling and damage and things like that. And then lastly, the third leg of the triangle there is the cost of the labor, because we've really done a good job in our implementations to date with manufacturing to manage down labor and inventory turns and all that things in the plant. And now we have to look at the warehouse and say, could I run this more efficiently, because that labor cost is real. Okay, benefits attributed to WMS, and this is off our case study that we did at 1,000 bulbs down in Dallas. That case study, by the way, is available and in print. Send a note to Bruce and we'll be happy to send you out a copy of it, but it was done with the folks there. On the directed put away side, their goal was to get all, if not all, close to all incoming goods in the bin ready to be pulled on the same day. And today, after 6 months of being live, they're at 95%. So 95% of the goods that come in are on the shelf ready to pick the same day. Batch picking and tax management. Since they actually physically doubled the size of their warehouse, this is a new building for them because they're growing so fast. But in spite of the extra space, they've actually improved their labor productivity on picking by 11%. So they're spending 11% less on labor to pick and ship than they did prior to implementing Collect. Order accuracy. This is extremely good for them. Part of that is because we do confirmations when we actually scan the item out of the bin, and they're at 99.3% order accuracy. And to be honest, I don't know how that 0.7% gets there. Dynamic bin management. Again, the danger you have when you expand your warehouse, in this case more than doubled, is sometimes you spread out. And when you spread out, it just means the people picking orders have farther to walk, and it takes longer. So in this case, we tripled the size of the warehouse. We didn't increase the staff whatsoever. So they have really good objectives and very good performance. Who do we normally implement with? Some of the first two are the easiest, serialized products and lot control products. I actually did this way in the beginning when we started out just doing manufacturing, implementing license plates, because the ability to move 100 serial numbers or 50 numbers or what have you in a single transaction on a license plate versus redundantly scanning those things into inventory was a big improvement. So medical, electronics, foods, pharma, we've done a lot of food this year. For some reason, most of the food we're doing is frozen. I have no idea why that is, but I don't have to go there and implement it. Also some stuff with metal industries and people in safety equipment. We're actually doing something in Canada with a customer where we're doing allocations based on the heat numbers. Their customers will only buy heats from certain suppliers. And again, we easily collect that data. We got a lot of business the last few years from people who started doing business with the big box stores, Home Depot, Lowe's, Walmart, all those guys who have very, very stringent requirements on labels. What's on the label, where the label's placed, and what have you. And in some cases, it's a not only a return, but a $25 fine if you ship a box that's labeled incorrectly. High volumes, that just makes sense. And then in some cases, it was because of local redundancy, and I'll talk more about this in a little bit, but literally we have the ability to deploy the collect server anywhere that we can get internet access to, including the cloud. So we have companies, for example, who have their ERP system and running in France, but we're running servers in Latin America to support the distribution centers there and commuting via high-speed internet. So here's what the technology environment looks like. On the left, we have Syspro and its database and its import, which in this case is business objects. On the right is the collect environment, and there's two pieces to that, if you will. I talked about running a separate server. So where our application has the ability to store transactional data for as large a buffer as you would like, and the reason we did that is in some countries we lose connectivity to the main server, and we might have to ship for 24 hours before it came back. This is especially in Latin America and some of the countries we're doing in Northern Europe. So we use ODBC to populate our database with static data, new part numbers, new item master detail, new customer masters, what have you, as well as dynamic data, new orders, new POs, what have you. So there's a buffer of that data sitting on our database. In turn, when a picker gets an order and scans a barcode, we update that data to Syspro real-time versus business objects. So there's two key takeaways here. One is we never write to the database. We always use the tools that come from our publishers. And secondly, all the transactions take place in real time. Now you might say, well, what happens if we do a rush PO and collect hasn't downloaded that purchase order yet, but the guy delivered it? In any of those circumstances, when we go to pull down that PO number, if it's not there, we'll go in real time and make a call to Syspro and pull that purchase order down and bring it down to the handheld. So the environment they're working on is as real time as we possibly can make it, and actually pretty fast. There's a couple components to this. One is handheld devices, truck mount devices, what have you. There's a variety of hardware manufacturers we use. We use Windows Mobile and Windows CE-based devices. We also have our desktop, which in this iteration has become more important because it gives us the ability to actually dispatch work and create unique work batches for an employee on the floor. And then lastly, the printing of the label themselves. Most new customers today will engage using Bartender, but we also support Loftware for label printing and format. And a myriad of printers. I mean, printers today at 1,000 bulbs, they have printers that are about the size of 2 hockey pucks that sit on the cart, connect via Bluetooth to the handheld device, and print all the labels off real time. So that's what the environment looks like. For the IT folks, here's just a little bit about integration. So we're using business objects. We've mapped our schemas for every one of our transactions, and I'll show you the tool in a minute. The key here, there's two keys. One is the way we built the mapping tool makes it relatively easy for us to move with you release to release. So today we have customers on 6 and on 6.1. If somebody next year comes and wants to go to 7, we'll support 7. But we think we've built it so we don't make it a terrible task to do that. The other key is the schema for those transactions is held in memory. So we're executing that as fast as we can, because some people always think, well, there's a tool in the middle of this. How fast can it be? And again, in the case of 1,000 bulbs, where they're picking 2,500 orders a day, they usually get sub 2-second response and closer to 1-second response. So it's a fairly efficient system. Again, these are tables that are accessible to your IT person, where every transaction is mapped along with values and data. And if I go to the next place, oops, it gets even bigger. So we can literally go into any of these tables and change a field here and there and be ready to run on the next release. And that's a key to our being able to support multiple releases in this environment. Okay, locations. Now let's talk about some warehouse stuff. So a location structure literally can be whatever supports what you're trying to do. So in some cases, even though there's one company, they may want to look like two companies from a virtual standpoint. They could have multiple sites. Those multiple sites actually could be in one building if that's what they were trying to do. Warehouses within that locations. And then superimposed upon locations are zones. Zones are things we use for directed put away as well as picking. And sometimes they carry properties for the item. So for example, in some cases they may have a secure zone, and that's where they lock up things that need to be under lock and key. Or we need to have refrigeration or humidity controls or things like that. And we identify in the item master what zone that needs to be in. That just makes sure if we create a new bin location for an item, we put it in the right zone. On the same vein, we know which employees work in which zones and which equipment they have. So for instance, like in bulk storage, they're typically going to have a high lift truck because they're pulling pallets down off of racks. In the quick pick area, they're going to typically have a cart that has 8 or 10 totes on it. And they're going to push that through the rack, so all that inventory is low. But this allows us to set up whatever scheme we need to support your business. A lot of controls on the bins themselves, starting out with types. And types also let us engineer a scheme where we can put holds on inventory. So for instance, stage quarantine, things like that we can do. Velocity, by this what we do is we actually measure the activity in a bin. And periodically we're going to run a report and kind of do an ABC analysis with the plan being that space allocated to A's should have all the fastest moving stuff. That space allocated to C should be your bulk stores or your full case storage. So we can do that. If we're going to successfully do directed put away, we need to store the locations, both the dimensions and the weights, as well as the container. And on the same side, and this is the challenge for new implementers, for that to really work, we need to get all the dimension data into the item master as well. The case of 1,000 bulbs, they're actually capturing, because they didn't have all this, they actually capture this on every receipt and look for missing data. So probably by the end of the year, they will have all the dimensions on 35,000 SKUs. I talked enough about that. Let's go here. Dynamic slotting, this is the end of that. So when we run that velocity report and we take a look at how the bins are situated, we're actually going to create recommendations. And those recommendations go out to specific users of a handheld system. So somebody might be picking inventory, and he comes back for his next work batch, and his supervisor might say, I want you to start doing relocations. And we'll send him tasks that say, move this from this zone to this zone. And then within that zone, here's areas you could create a bin location for that item. So that all happens as part of our dispatch system and task management. Packaging types. It's literally the opportunity here to, if you can define a package type, we can create it in our system and store and direct picks to that package site. So for instance, you buy it as each is, but it might come in cartons with an inner pack and an outer pack. And you might sell cartons, you might sell individual SKUs, and you might sell full pallet loads. At the end of the day in Syspro, we're going to say we have 100,000 units, for example. But when we go to pick orders, we're going to know that we have 20 pallets, we have 80 cases, and we have 57 eaches in a SKU. So we can actually direct it to pick, excuse me. We can direct pick activity to what's expected to be in that bin and often get what the customer is looking for. There's two reasons we deal with that. One is some customers have specific packaging. Like some in the food business, a lot of retailers want what they call a half-height pallet. which is about usually a 4-case high pallet. They don't want a full pallet load. And we want to be able to support that. So if a customer has packaging types, we're going to know that. Once we do that, we can use a license plate, which in fact is a container. And now say on that license plate we have 20 cartons. And we can move the license plate along and ship from the license plate as well. Inventory management. Now the key here, Lars and I were talking the other day, we're not doing your inventory planning from an overall inventory standpoint. So we're not saying you should reorder 500 of these pieces, go cut a PO. That's not what we do. That's what Syspro does. So however you manage your inventory in Syspro, that's what we're working with. What we're doing is managing the inventory that's in quick pick areas versus bulk storage, and therefore literally creating a min-max report that says, go get this inventory, go get a case of this, or go get 6 cases, whatever, break it down and put it in the quick pick area. So within just basic materials, we cover the movement between zones, between bins. We do adjustments. We do a basic, where do I find this in a warehouse? So again, because we're managing the bin locations in our system, you go to the handheld or you go to the desktop, put in a part number, we'll tell you where it is. Cycle count and physical inventories are both supported, as well as on-demand labeling. So if it, it's one thing where it comes in, it's not labeled or it's damaged, we're going to print a new label. But also, in the course of doing a cycle count, you might go to cycle count some stuff and it's got a damaged label. You can just go and say, here's the part number I'm at, give me a new label. Scan a good label, get a new one printed on, and move on. Task management is the driver to that, and there's really, the key things we're doing there is directed put away, cycle counts, and replenishments, as well as relocations. So if you've utilized this, and this is the way you run the business, literally when a worker comes and says, okay, I'm done doing put away, what do you want me to do next? You could give them a new batch to pick and move them over to picks, or you could say, here's 25 parts, go cycle count, and report the results. And he has all those transactions on his screen. Just a note on the screens, there's full security here, so when an employee logs in, they only see the functions that they're allowed to do. And also those functions, if you're in a multilingual situation, those functions will come out in the language that that person is identified as preferring. Receiving the goods. So we can receive a couple different ways. The easiest way is it comes in, it's perfectly labeled by the vendor, and it's got a barcode, and we scan the barcode and either pull up a list of goods, pull up the PO itself, move it to stage, and away we go. And this is the thing people forget about, sometimes it comes in and there are no barcodes. So we're going to have to type in that purchase order number, and we'll show them the POs that are open, get a confirmation this is the PO, and then they can go from there, and they'll actually print labels as they receive these items. That receipt could be a staged inventory, it could be an inspection inventory, or it could be right in what's called the put-away zone. And again, that's determined by the person on the floor, as well as what your procedures are. Typically what we do in receiving is we'll create a license plate for a pallet. So they're going to set a pallet on the floor, and they'll start receiving goods off the truck or receiving them out of inspection, what have you. For some companies, this will be a place to verify the count, and we can force that to happen. And then lastly, when they say, I wanted to go to put away now, they're going to scan the license plate, and we take a look at the items. Let's say there's 20 POs on that pallet. We look at those items, what the preferred bin locations is, and we'll say, okay, go to Zone A, bin 101. So we're going to create the routing of how we want them to move through the warehouse to do this put-away sequencing. If you're in the import business or getting large volumes in container shipment, we've also supported container receiving. Syspro happens to have an idea of a vessel, so we can receive from a vessel. Some companies receive from the inbound ASN. We can use either one of those. And the goal here literally was to get the container unloaded and get it out of the bay. That's the biggest thing. So typically in our implementation, we take all those goods in a single transaction, we receive them to stage. Now that's for us, it's typically a quarantine location. That's your choice, but it's a quarantine location. And now we've got that container out of the bay and that truck's gone. So we can take our time and go through the actual shipment, verify what we got, inspection if that's what we're going to do, and then move it into put away. So it's a big time saver for those customers that do that. Transfer orders. A lot of customers we deal with have multiple warehouses or multiple facilities, either one. And they wanted to have the ability to, in a controlled manner, move inventory between those facilities. Now, in some cases, some people buy and sell between facilities because they're companies, so they do sales orders and POs, and that's fine as well. This is something that fits into that same scheme, but we don't have to create a sales order or a purchase order. So literally, if I'm an inventory person, I can say, I want to create a transfer order, and here's the stuff I want from bulk stores. So this SKU, this SKU, this SKU, whatever, and create that transfer order. When we get all those goods are pulled, right, because that transfer order goes to a picker just like sales orders went to a picker. We pick it and we stage it for whatever means we're going to use to ship it. Now I'm coming from the shipping end. They ship those goods. When they do that, the quantities leave the first facility, go into an in-transit facility, and at the other end, when we receive this, I'm moving fast here. When we receive this, we're now going to verify that we got what they said they shipped, which if they're all sealed containers is pretty straightforward. If they're broken cases, it's going to take a little more work. We can print labels. And then this falls into the same directed put-away sequence we use for incoming purchasing. So it's a way to handle those transactions in a kind of scheduled, controlled manner without creating any additional training or processes, what have you, to fit into the system. Bin replenishment. Again, we're not mentioning the overall inventory. Now we're looking at, we have individual bins that are in a quick pick area, and we want to set min-maxes for that inventory so we can pull it and replenish the bin in time. And what we're going to do is create replenishment tasks for task management that, again, says if somebody's available, or if I'm a warehouse supervisor, let me take this employee and give him 50 bins that need to be replenished in a batch, and he can go off and do replenishments. Okay, so now we need to actually get some of this product out and shipped in the customer's hands and start creating some revenue. The key here is there are about 6 different ways we can pull down orders and ship product. So it really depends on what your situation is. And that's the same for all of this. I'm kind of showing you at the high end, you know, full directed put away and batch picking and what have you. But if you know, it's kind of a you can walk before you have to run with this stuff. So we can do things fairly straightforward. The whole cycle, if you will, of fulfillment starts with Syspro does an allocation that gives me the order and the customer. I do an allocation that tells me where to get it from. Then I take a look at my picking options as far as how do I actually pick this order. I'm going to pick it, do the paperwork, ship it, and if I'm using my own trucks, I'm going to plan the load off of that. So we're going to go through that cycle. Allocations literally could be anything. A strategy could be anything we could think of and reduce to a logic statement. In our system, they're just stored procedures. Typically, people use FIFO and FIFO. They'll use smallest quantity, and by that, I mean the fewest number of containers to get this particular order shipped. So I could ship it in eaches or I could ship it in cases. I'm going to try to ship it in cases. Or similar to optimal number of packages to meet a sales order need. Another one, we might go the other way and say, I want to allocate to go to as many bins as possible, which is kind of the opposite of being efficient. But what we're trying to do is we'll have a number of bins with 2 here, 3 there, and we want to get that space freed up for other items. So we're going to force an order through to clean up all those through this allocation strategy. Again, this is a table you're able to see and maintain. There can be any number of strategies, and what you can do is now build a sequence. So first we want to do FIFO within containers, So first in, first out, for instance, if this is shipped in cases, first in, first out, ship in cases. My next is just give me first in, first out. And then my last is first in, first out, go to the if you look at the first two are coming from another facility, the third one is coming from my own racks. So you can build a strategy of how you want the system to approach this and as many strategies as you need to. And as I said, in some extreme cases, we actually have strategies for certain groups of customers who need to have their inventory allocated a certain way. So the simplest is just paperless picking. Actually, the simplest is print a packing slip with barcodes and scan it and walk through the warehouse. And we still have people that do that, and we support that as well. Paperless says I'm going to actually just download the pick list to the handheld device. So I'm going to show them the order. I can do some sorts. A supervisor can tell them what work they want. And they go head through the scans, pick the inventory, and bring it out to the pack-out station. So it's fairly easy and straightforward. On the handheld, when we give them orders, one of the sequences we might do is we might date sequences. And we just want to say, pick your past dues first, then get today's work. And in some customers, they actually want to get a jump on tomorrow's pack-out, so they'll start showing them tomorrow's work as well. Pick to pack was something we really did, not so much for the high distribution company, but for the companies that ship very large, complicated orders. So think capital goods manufacturing, for example, where for a single order I might have 5 pallets of items in long pieces of structural steel and what have you. So what I really want to do is go through and scan the inventory and put it in the box, or more likely on the pallet it's actually going to ship on. Hence, pick to pack. So it's a one-step process. This can still go in location sequence, although sometimes it may go in weight sequence. Because if you think about it, if you're packing out pallets, you probably want the heaviest stuff on the bottom, just from a crush standpoint. So they can choose how they want these picks sequenced. They could split it amongst 3 pickers. If these are really big, we can actually take the order lines and spread them out amongst the pickers. Because at the end, we're going to tie them back to an LPN. Now, that could be an LPN for a container, or it could be an LPN for a truck pickup. A lot of this stuff goes LTL, and we want to just create that load virtually by using the license plate. So it's typically people, large inventory items, large complicated orders, and very often serial numbers included in that mix. Batch picking is a little more for the high volume operations. Oh, again, it doesn't have to be, but that's typically where the demand came from. The batch itself can be assigned either by a planner, so if they want to take some overt management, or if you're fine, it's the guy in the warehouse picking up the handheld, signing in, saying, I'm ready for work. Based on where they work, some parameters, and equipment, we're going to download a batch for them. They could actually take multiple batches and combine them into a wave. Now, a wave pick is, I'm going to go through the warehouse, in a bin sequence, but I've got 6 totes in here. And when I get to bin 1, I'm going to take that SKU and put 2 in this tote, 3 in this tote, what have you, and fill the orders out. Batch pick kind of does the same thing within a batch, but this allows you to combine multiple batches. Works well if you have lots of small parts and small orders. Batches can be reassigned. So it gets, a guy has a fairly big batch, and 3:30 he's going to go home. He can close out what they've picked. Supervisor assigns it to a next operator. They log in. They get the balance of that batch. They pick it, and it goes to pack out. There's a lot of things the operators and the management can do with that. As I said, one of the things that we started this for was people wanted to make specific delivery times. So I want to create batches for FedEx or for UPS or what have you, because I know what time they're going to get here. Link those directly to carriers, and then add in zones if I need be. So there's quite a bit of organization that can take place. And this is typically done before the operators show up in the morning. So when they show, they download it. We look at all these rules that were set up. Here's their work batch, and away they go. Let me come back here. This is all driven off a user profile, and there's lots of parameters we can put in this if your needs get more sophisticated. And the actual function itself is pretty straightforward. He comes to the first bin. In this case, we're pulling batteries. He needs 2 batteries. He's going to scan in that location because we've turned on location verification. And that just means we want to make sure that they pulled these from the bin we sent them to, which if you have multiple bins in your inventory, make sure things stay straight. If need be, it will then scan him for the item number, the lot number, the serial number if it's a serialized product, and it knows that. And if he's putting it on a tote, he'll scan that LPN. So it'll prompt him field by field, scans the data in, moves on to the next item. We did batch status for 2 functions, really. One is from a supervisor standpoint, where is that batch, and is it almost done because I see the truck pulling up? And then from a customer service standpoint, if you can imagine a warehouse where at any point in time you've got 800 to 1,200 orders on the floor, and you're trying to expedite one particular order, it's like a needle in a haystack. This allows them to actually go in and say which operator, which batch, and actually I know what the last part he picked was, so I can say go to row 3, all the way to the back, and you should find them. And then we need to ship it. The key to shipping is pretty straightforward. You got to get the label right. You get the label right, the correct barcode format, and all the data, and your life is pretty straightforward. We support pretty much any label you can think of. Label size is also almost a derivative often of where the inventory is going. So for example, if it's in a pallet rack and they're big cases, they may put a big 4x6 label on that thing, and that way we can scan it from a lift truck without having to necessarily get it down first and check on it. When we're actually doing shipping labels, the size might be governed by the size of the box or by the customer. From Syspro, we know the label configuration for unique customer ship-to item numbers, so we can print the proper level. We use the GS1, the 128, the 3 of 9. Those are the 3 popular formats today, and we have support and customers using all of those. We also print all the documents, everything that goes in the box or on the outside of the box. So we have all the static data that we downloaded from Syspro that's sitting on our server already. We're going to do packing slip bill of lading or consolidated bill of lading, depending on how we're shipping, how we have to pack it up. If it's international, we're doing pro formas, certificate of content, letter of instruction, hazmat, every form. We haven't found a form that we don't support today. These are all in crystal, so you can maintain them as things go on and things change. The key here, if you're in the big box world, is we got to get the count right, we got to get the parts right, we got to have the right label. If you're having problems today with accuracy in the warehouse, there is a thing you can turn on called Confirm SO. And what that really does is enforce a supervisor taking a look at the box and doing a second scan on all the items to make sure it's right before it gets sealed up. It's kind of drastic. Currently today we only have one customer doing it who had problems, and when you're shipping to Home Depot and they keep yelling at you, you take drastic measures. But it is an option to make sure we get the right stuff. If you're shipping via your own trucks or LTL and you want to be able to organize that shipment, you might go to load planning. When we create a load, we can it's a virtual thing, it's like a 43-footer on the floor, if you will. And what we're going to do is say we want to flag all these loaders into the load. So this is drag and drop. We can then, off that load, create pick batches to fill that truck. If it's your truck and you want to do delivery sequences, we'll actually create the batches so that we stage it and we pick it in delivery sequence, and that's how the truck gets loaded. And then the nice thing is when this truck ships, it's a single transaction. So we take the load ID, we bring it up, and we say ship. And Syspro, if there's 500 parts on it or orders, it doesn't matter. Syspro gets updated in a single transaction and it's gone. For a couple customers, we've actually gone one step farther, and in Europe we've integrated this to a route management system. And what that means is it's your truck, but you're going to use a third party to best route you through the geography. So we upload what the load looks like to the route planning system. It literally creates the GPS route, if you will, just like in your car, that this truck should go on. And then we ship the load, and they take over from there. So there's some options available here. Okay. In the shipping world, we ship, today we currently have deployed UPS, the Postal Service, and FedEx. We're doing DHL and Purolator, and those will be done in the next 6 months. And then we've also done some common carriers. However, what we're not is we're not a rate shopping kinds of shipping manifest system, if you will. So if you have 2 or 3 carriers and you just want to interface to them, we've got that. If you want to use a third-party product, we have ClipperShip. I know we looked at doing Starship as well. Either of those is fine. We don't sell those products, but we can use that. And if your demands are more than what we offer, you can do that. We do LTL on demand. Again, because we're not trying to be all things to all people in this world, but if somebody has a particular 1 or 2 LTL carriers that they want to use and the cost of buying ClipperShip or something like that is prohibitive and they don't really need to rate shop, we can communicate with them, provided, in fact, that carrier supports it. There actually are, there are still carriers today who don't do any electronic interface whatsoever. So if we're doing that, we're going to pass the sales order data directly to the shipper, send it out to FedEx. FedEx comes back with a pro number, rate charges, what have you. We pick up those numbers, it goes on the document, and when we say this thing is shipped, it goes up to Syspro, and all that material is available for your customer service people. So if the customer wants to know how did it go, or if you're sending notifications out of UPS or whatever, you've got all that data right away. We also created a shipping portal because sometimes somebody is really in a hurry to know where something is, and there's that never land between the time it got picked and the time FedEx leaves. There's that couple of hours where we actually want to know where the goods are. So this is a web portal available to customer service or anybody like that literally says, we put in a sales order and I'll find out the status. Even if the truck hasn't gone, we've generated the pro number, I can tell you what it is. So that's available just, again, to do better customer response. And then lastly is performance data. As I said, in the past, the warehouse is kind of a hard thing to manage because it's big, there's tall racks, and people kind of walk down and you're not sure when they're coming back out again. So in this version of Collect today, we collect everything everybody does and when they did it. So everything's time-stamped. We know the operator, the bin he was at, how many pieces he loaded in that bin or how many pieces he took out of that bin. All that data is there. So we've organized that all in the database, actually all the way out to the pack-out stations, and those are the guys that are actually shipping the boxes. And if you go to 1,000 Bulbs, you'll see a big white board behind the management office that shows here's how we did yesterday. So they publish all that data out. They have daily goals for shipments and what have you. Later this year, we'll be actually introducing a dashboard for this application. So you can actually get a quick snapshot of how are we doing in the warehouse, how much work did we put out, how many orders, what have you. And that'll just be a byproduct of the system. Okay, one last thing I should just say before we get to questions is everything we went through today, other than the extensions, but within the warehouse, all those options are all included in the base price. So this is not a modular pick and piece here. You get it all for one price. Bruce, back to you.
Thank you, Rich, for an excellent presentation. Now is the time to cover some of the questions that have come in. Please do submit your questions at this time. I noticed that we already have about 4 or 5 in there, but use the questions tab. We've got about 15 minutes, and we'll try to cover as much as we can. The first question I have is from Laura Pullins, and she is asking, Rich, is there a bonded inventory function?
We checked, and we've never done bonded. It's not to say we couldn't, but actually, you know what? We would appreciate it if she could send us a note with what the requirements are to do that. We could take a look at it.
Okay, next question from Brandon Tucker. Is the business objects Syspro license included in the product, or is that additional purchase?
That's a purchase from Syspro. We don't have a runtime for this product.
Regarding, also from Brandon, regarding license plating, can you accept serial numbers generated outside of Collect, or does Collect need to manage the creation of the serial number?
No, it actually, there's two options there. I mean, one is, yeah, we'll take the serial numbers that actually came in from the outside. Same with lot numbers. You know, we'll take vendor lot as part of that. There's also, and I can't remember how it works in Syspro, but in some communities, they actually don't create the serial number till shipment time. And for some customers, the ERP serial number is a little too complicated. It's more than they want it to do, but they want a serialized number on the final shipment, and we can use our own mixed number serial numbers for that.
Thank you. Next question is from Roberto Espinal. How does this interact with landed cost tracking?
We don't do anything specific to landed cost. At the customers we have this, they've already got their landed cost standards, and those are updated at the time we update the rest of the data to Syspro.
And from John Lewis, what do you find to be the most reliable label printer? We're okay with Intermac. We're okay with Zebra. We've used Zebra for a long time, but we haven't found anything. Just the net is we work with the three majors, so it's Intermec, Honeywell, and what used to be Symbol. And pretty much any printer today in that environment is a good printer. They all have quality stuff. Matthew Peters is asking, is inventory quarantined by location or LPN?
Could be either. It could be either. In some cases, they'll set up a quarantine location, but I also have the option of taking an LPN and putting it wherever I wanted and saying that those goods are quarantined. And when you do that, there's a unique set of rules as to who can move and what transactions can move that inventory. So it could be either way.
Thomas Pontier is asking, elaborate about cycle count frequency and SKU, auto-generated lists of SKU and frequency based upon ABC, for example.
Right. The cycle count frequency is really determined by the user. So we've got a set of parameters in there as to how often we intend to cycle count and how often we want to we do an ABC classification just like everybody else. So you want to obviously count your A's more than your C's. But really, you can establish those parameters as how you'd like it to work. So it's really user-driven.
How many implementations do you have with Syspro customers? This comes from Deb Lindwehr.
Today we have 6. So
what operating system is required on the RF units? From Kevin.
Windows Mobile or Windows CE. Or on the touchscreens, it's Windows 7 for now.
And we have another question from Laura. Are the character limits for serial numbers and lot numbers the same as in Syspro, or are they held separately?
Well, that's an implementation question, because if you're using lots and serials inside Syspro, we need to keep them the same. There's an opportunity to store that stuff only in Collect, and to tell you the truth, you'd have to talk to one of our consultants to get advice as to whether that's a good idea or not. As I said, we offer that only because, and I'll just refer to one of our other ERP partners. In their system, you can't turn on serial numbers for just a finished good. If you turn it on, you have to turn it on everywhere. So there's a lot of serial transactions. So when we first did that, we elected to store serial numbers in the Collect database only and generate them in shipment time. Now they're still accessible because the Collect database is just SQL Server. So you can still get at them and do reports in that. But it was really, that's a unique situation. So you'd have to ask one of our consultants if that's a good thing to do or not.
Next question from Matthew Peters. Are intercase barcodes required for pick feedback?
They are not if the case is sealed. if the case is open, that would be your choice. Whether you, I would do it because I'd rather scan 4 interpacks, right, than 15 or 16 labels. But that would be your choice.
Okay, we've got several questions regarding total costs and pricing and everything else. If you can contact us on that, or Rich at the email, or my email at the end, we can, or Lars, we can respond to that. Moving on to the next question, we are using sales order to make packing list. How does collect connect with the sales order? And this is from Bonica Tong.
Collect actually has a copy of the sales order on our server. So we're printing the packing list off of that detail. So it's actually just an image, it's a print program off the sales order.
Thank you. Jay Hall is asking, is 1,000 bulbs a reference site? We are quite close to them, and how long did it take to implement through enough for them to start improving their productivity?
Yeah, they're a reference site. You need to contact either, if you would like to speak to them or anything, contact me or Mike Tashman is the business partner that supports them. They were about 4 months, and of really hard work. Part of that was because when they implemented this, they decided to move their warehouse at the same time. So while we were training people on all new software, we were actually relocating the inventory, which made for a challenging 4 months. But we started out in May, and that performance data and the case study I got from him in September. So pretty quick.
Barry Chang is asking to elaborate on the relationship between this system and the shipping system.
Oh, you mean that? I'm not sure what he's asking.
Barry, maybe you can send Rich an email with a little more detail, and he can go ahead and respond to that. You see his email is in the lower left-hand corner. And then Kevin Niemeyer there are different screen formats to accommodate large and small. Are there different screen formats to accommodate large and small RF screens?
It depends. We have a list of certified devices that all our screens fit in pretty well. Outside of that, we would look at certifying a new device. For example, if you're looking at the new wearable device where the screen format is horizontal instead of vertical, we'd literally have to redo our screens. We don't fit on that.
Okay, Dave Nuremberg is asking about how many SKUs do you have at 1,000 bulbs?
I think right now, because they loaded Christmas, believe it or not, they loaded Christmas about 8 weeks ago. They're at 30,000, 30 or 35,000.
Dan is asking, do you have a single warehouse location using this system integrated with Syspro? Any single warehouse locations integrated with Syspro?
Yes.
Robert Spots is asking, what is the interface method used to update Syspro?
Business. Everything we do for update is business objects.
And Matthew is asking, how are kits handled in picking/packing?
We actually wrote that for one of our customers. So if you're going to send me a sales order that's got a SKU on it, and that SKU, in fact, is a kit, we'll explode the kit on the handheld device and have them pick all those components and pack them in the box.
Okay, those are all the questions that we have submitted at this time. We have about 3.5 more minutes. Do we have any other questions? Go ahead and type them in now. Otherwise, we'll go ahead and wrap up. Okay, so we have another one coming in from David. Is there a way to stop a pick ticket from issuing if the customer is past due?
Yeah, there's actually, it wouldn't allocate if we've established credit rules. Although I'd have to ask Lars, I think if the guy's on credit hold, you guys, I'm not sure if Syspro would allocate it if the customer was on hold either.
Would not, no.
Yeah.
Okay, that appears to be the last question, so let's go ahead and wrap up. Oh, well, it looks like we had one come in just last second here. Whose server does collect data reside on, the customers or WMS?
Oh, it's the collect data is on the customer's server. I mean, I guess if you're asking, we would prefer to have a server separate from Syspro. So we'd like you to have Syspro on one server and our application on another one, if I am understanding the question right.
Okay. Thank you very much for all your questions. Let's go ahead and wrap up. There was also a question earlier, too, and I believe we can answer that on this slide. The webinar recording will be available early next week. We'll be sending out an email with a link which will enable you to watch the webinar on demand. Our next webinar in this series is on November 29th at the same time. It's going to be Unipoint Quality for Syspro. It's going to be the same time in the morning, and it is again on a Thursday. Looking forward, you want to make sure that you save the date. Syspro's user conference is going to be April 8th to 11th in Nashville, Tennessee, and more information will be coming your way very shortly if it has not already been received. So I'd like to go ahead and thank Rich for an excellent presentation, thank Lars for his participation too, and more importantly, you, the audience, for making the time to attend. Again, if you have any questions, please feel free to contact Rich, myself, or Lars. You can see our emails on the screen. So enjoy the rest of your day, and thank you very much.
Okay, bye-bye.
Goodbye.